All right, it's Liquid Gold where we do shots.
That's right.
Shots. All right, it's a springtime edition of Shots right here on Liquid Gold. Thanks for joining us today. Is there such thing as an Easter cocktail? Not really. But this kind of family of cocktails might be perfect for spring. Good morning drinks. We're talking about Corpse Revivers, and specifically the Corpse Reviver number 2. We're going to talk about that drink today, and also some of the other variations of Corpse Revivers through time. Drinks that go back to the 1870s, while the Corpse Reviver number 2, probably the most famous, was really created and honed and then later published at the Savoy, the American bar that is, at the Savoy Hotel in London. So we're going to get into all this history and give you some recipes, and then we'll just get out of here. My name's Mike Wolf, your host today, recovering from a little surgical procedure, so I thought this might be a good one to get into. I could use some reviving, for sure. But doing okay here. Another reason why I thought this cocktail would be great to feature today is I saw the movie Babylon recently. Total mess of a movie, but has some really good portions, some really good scenes. First hour, very entertaining. I might not pay a ton to see it if I were you, but if you catch it on TV, if it comes on TV, that first hour, super entertaining. And one of the most fascinating things about it in terms of cocktail culture is Brad Pitt's character, Jack Conrad, kind of a Clark Gable-esque silent movie star heading into the world of talkies. He's at a bar and he orders, I don't even see who he's with really, but he orders about 4 or 5 different drinks, one of which is a Corpse Reviver, and then gives out all the ingredients, tells the person how to make it. So pretty interesting to have a cocktail like that in the movies. A big star giving you the recipe. Pretty interesting cocktail lore stuff right there. Check us out. Hit us up on Instagram at liquidgold_pod. Email us liquidgoldpod@gmail.com. And check us out at the website, liquidgold.show. Got to give a shout out to producer Michael Eads and everybody at We Own This Town, the We Own This Town podcast network. Cranking out great content as always. The music show, probably the flagship show, had some premieres recently. So premiering some music. As always, check it out, weownthistown.net. All right, the Corpse Reviver family of cocktails really came about as kind of a hangover cure, a hair of the dog, if you will. These were the days when people weren't as interested in drinking water to recover, because water wasn't really that safe of a beverage. Cider was safer, beer was safer, and cocktails arguably were safer. But the hair of the dog, that whole idea that you need some hair of the dog the morning after, there is some science to back it up, because it kind of backs off the toxicity that you're starting to feel in the morning when you're hungover. But a lot of people go back to the days of Aristophanes, who had this quote: "Take the hair, it's well written, of the dog by which you're bitten. Work off one wine by his brother, and one labor with another. Cook with cook, and strife with strife, business with business, wife with wife." And that's where the hair of the dog terminology came from, thousands of years ago. Now, the first Corpse Reviver is a cocktail that has come back a little bit as the number 2 got really popular, of which we're going to discuss. And it's definitely the most famous one. It's definitely what he's ordering in the movie. But the number 1 is a really beautiful, like, Manhattan variation where you mix cognac with Calvados, which is the French apple brandy, and sweet vermouth. So if you love Manhattan variations and you like brandy drinks, cognac drinks, this is really kind of a fall drink. The Corpse Reviver number 2 is a great springtime cocktail, and that's why I wanted to talk about it. But the number 1 is more of a, I would say, fall drink, more of an after dinner drink. That's what's so strange, in that it's kind of the first version of these hair of the dog type cocktails. But for the number one, you basically could do, and this is a stirred drink, just so you know. So we could do 1 ounce of brandy, 1 ounce of Calvados or an apple brandy, and ½ ounce of sweet vermouth. Now, if you're a vermouth fan, God bless you. You could always do equal parts with this one. 1 ounce brandy or cognac, 1 ounce Calvados or apple brandy, 1 ounce of sweet vermouth. The original recipe calls for no bitters, but it might be an interesting experiment for you to see what bitters really do to a drink like this. So they can add a really nice bit of complexity, make the cocktail come off as a bit drier. So I would recommend adding a dash or two of bitters in this one, Angostura, or maybe if you wanted to try some orange bitters in this one, give it a little apples and oranges flavor. That could be good as well. But this is a beautiful, silky, delicious, and really, I think better is like a dessert or after dinner drink. Helps settle the stomach, calm the nerves. But that's a really cool cocktail that I think you'll see probably as fall comes closer. I think you'll see that cocktail really come back in a big way over the next year or so. The number two has always been back. It's been back for a long time, but there are also some other interesting ones I want to go through before we get to the number two. So there's a Savoy Corpse Reviver from 1954 that was white creme de menthe, brandy, and fernet. And that would be delicious. I think you could do, say, 1.5 ounces brandy, maybe a 1/4 ounce creme de menthe, 1/4 to ½ ounce of fernet, and you got this beautiful mix of sweet and bitter. That would be really cool. And then there's another Corpse Reviver from 1871 in the Gentleman's Table Guide, and that you fill a wine glass, which was the 2 ounce mix, the 2 ounce jigger at the time. So you do 1 ounce of brandy, 1 ounce of maraschino liqueur, and then 2 dashes of bitters. It was Boker's back then. That would be probably Angostura now, or you can find a revived, speaking of reviving, you can find a revived version of Boker's bitters, I believe on Amazon or online, where they tried to recreate the old Boker's bitters. But that cocktail would be probably a little sweet. I guess that's a little bit more of a dessert cocktail as well, but would definitely revive the spirit, no doubt. Another one from 1937. This is a Corpse Reviver that had brandy, orange, and lemon juice, 2 dashes of grenadine, and topped with sparkling wine. So that sounds delicious, almost like a whiskey sour meets a French 75. You could do maybe 1.5 ounces of brandy, ½ ounce orange juice, ½ ounce lemon juice, and depending on how sweet you want it, I'd say between ½ to 3/4 ounces of grenadine, a good pomegranate juice grenadine. Oh, I can always mention the Liquid Gold book, Cheer, the Liquid Gold Holiday Drinking Guide. We've got an amazing pomegranate grenadine recipe in there. So if you need that, check out the book. It's on liquidgold.show, the website. Had to get that in there. Let's see, some other Corpse Revivers. Trader Vic had a really cool version, created the Mai Tai, so you got to give him some credit in the cocktail canon. Created a lot of really interesting drinks, and his book has a ton of recipes through time, through cocktail history. He had a Corpse Reviver where he was basically substituting Swedish Punch for Kina Lillet. Swedish Punch was fell out of favor and kind of disappeared off the map as a product, but was revived during the cocktail revival of the last 15 years or so. And you can find it. It's basically like a rum. It's a sugarcane-based liqueur. It's like a lighter rum with a little bit of spice to it, but great for mixing drinks, great for tiki drinks. So he basically, his version, you could do like 3/4 ounce of gin, 3/4 ounce of lemon juice, 3/4 ounce of orange liqueur, Cointreau, dry Curacao, Grand Marnier, whatever you're thinking. And then the 3/4 ounce of Swedish Punch. Throw in a dash of absinthe, shake that up, and there you go. You've got Trader Vic's kind of variation on the Corpse Reviver, number 2. Okay, now let's get into the big one. The number 2 that you've seen on menus probably over the years. It's the ideal morning cocktail. It's the ideal brunch cocktail. And we got to say a few things about the book, where this recipe came from. The Savoy cocktail book, really probably the most important cocktail book of the early part of the 20th century. It was in 1893 that the American bar opened at the Savoy Hotel, started serving American-style cocktails because they were just clamoring for it in London. High society there, in the Brits, they really needed to have their American cocktails to feel completely sophisticated. It was in the 1920s that Harry Craddock came to the American bar there in London, brought a ton of recipes with him. He became the head bartender there and was a master of cocktails. And one of his that really has stood the test of time is the Corpse Reviver No. 2. Quick recipe on it: 3/4 ounces of gin, 3/4 ounces of lemon juice, 3/4 ounces of orange liqueur or Cointreau, 3/4 ounces of, now the old recipe would have been Kina Lillet, which is now gone. That doesn't exist anymore. A lot of people substitute Lillet Blanc for it, but the two things were so different. So what we're going to say here for this is use Coqui Americano. And we'll get into Coqui Americano here in a second and how special it is in cocktails. But yeah, use Coqui Americano for this. It's got a really beautiful mix of sweet and bitterness. That's just great for cocktails. And then you also need your absinthe. And I like a nice bar spoon of absinthe. I don't like just like a dash or to spray it on the glass. I was talking to a colleague about this recently, and it's like, I want to taste. We both agreed, you want to taste the absinthe in this drink. If people don't like absinthe or they're new to absinthe, you might want to go a little light. But if you love absinthe, this is a great cocktail where it kind of sneaks in there, but becomes a really complex and fascinating drink as you drink it, and it warms up and the complexities start to show themselves to you. Really phenomenal. So ideal brunch drink, ideal morning drink. You can serve this at a party. You could batch it, maybe make it almost like a punch, and it's typically served up. And I like a nice orange twist or orange zest, orange peel express, and some people like a cherry with this one. But beautiful drink, absolutely love it. Now about the Coqui Americano, so the Kina Lillet that was really prominent at the time. Kina Lillet was in the Vesper cocktail, in the James Bond book, the Ian Fleming books, and it was like a white vermouth that had a little bit of sweetness to it, and then also had some bitterness. And since it really fell out of popularity in the 70s and 80s as the cocktail scene kind of died out a little bit, Kina Lillet was gone by like 1986. Coqui Americano is Italian and is made from a Moscato base. So you definitely taste that kind of sweetness of the Moscato, but there's also some really nicely bitter notes to it. So it's one of those things that kind of tricks your palate because you taste the sweetness right up front, and then you get a nice hit of bitterness. Goes great with grapefruit juice, orange juice, great with sparkling wine. You know, you can make like a white spritz with it. People use it in white Negronis as the Campari substitute. And there's a ton of different things you can do with it. I know we've talked about it on the show before, maybe haven't highlighted it quite as much. It gets the bitterness from the cinchona bark, key to good tonic, and a key ingredient for tonic recipes. And there's also a little bit of gentian in there as well. So a couple of just powerhouse bitter ingredients. And with the Moscato base and plenty of sugar, don't think that Coqui Americano is technically very bitter at all to me. It's just a nice little bitter note in there that really, a lot of the drinks that are in the Savoy cocktail book, they don't have bitters. I think they were making a lot of Manhattan variations at the time in the like the 1920s and 30s there in London. Those were really popular drinks, really similar to the Corpse Reviver No. 1, which is kind of interesting. People were drinking, equal parts type of Manhattan variations where you might do like a Martinez riff, like gin, 1 ounce of gin, 1 ounce of sweet vermouth, and maybe 1 ounce of orange liqueur, or 2 ounces of bourbon maybe a half ounce of maraschino, and a half ounce of sweet vermouth. So there were a lot of interesting Manhattan variations that were popular at the time, and equal parts cocktails as well. And that's what the Corpse Survivor number 2 is. So you're essentially 3/4 ounce gin, 3/4 ounce lemon, 3/4 ounce Cointreau, 3/4 ounce Cokie Americano, and then your dash or bar spoon. You could go up to even a 1/4 ounce if you really like absinthe. So that's shaken, strained in a coupe. Want to make sure you got that recipe again. Okay, now, while I wouldn't recommend necessarily drinking 4 of these back to back to back to back, that's what Harry Craddock suggested. In the book, he wrote, to be taken before 11 a.m. or whenever steam and energy are needed. And then he notes 4 of these taken in swift succession will quickly unrevive the corpse again. So it'll set you right back down if you do that. So you want to watch out with that. The classic garnish is a cherry that we mentioned. And if you are looking for a great cocktail book with recipes, tons and tons of recipes from this period, the Savoy Hotel cocktail book by Harry Craddock is pretty amazing. You'll learn a lot. You'll find a lot of drinks that you've never heard of that are just delicious. And it'll probably inspire you to fill out your bar cart a little bit, because there are some kind of obscure type of ingredients in some of these drinks in this book, but a phenomenal piece of history, and it must have been a great place to be drinking there between the late 1890s and 1930s there in London. Wish I was there. All right, that's it for me today. Thanks to everybody at We Own This Town. Thanks to Upright T-Rex Music for the tunes, Jess Hash for the logo, and our producer Michael Eads. Kenneth will be back soon with more booze news. Lots to talk about. Lots has happened as we get into garden party season, patio party season, patio porch pounder season. Lots more to come. Check us out at liquidgold.show, and we will see you next time. My name's Mike Wolf, drinking a Corpse Survivor number 2, which is true. Liquid Gold.